If you're an HR professional who works hard to fill roles within your company, keep employees engaged, and build company culture, welcome to America Back to Work, where dreams only work if we do. We'll share wide-ranging issues surrounding pre-employment background screening, HR topics such as recruiting, hiring, labor trends, and company culture, as well as broader HR-influenced business topics such as customer experience, service level excellence, and protecting what matters through best practices in prevention, protection, and corporate security. America Back to Work is brought to you by S2 Verify. Here's your host, Arnett Heinz.
Welcome to America Back to Work, brought to you by S2 Verify, where our purpose is to help you hire with confidence and manage insider risk. I'm your host, Arnett Heinz. Please allow me to introduce our guest today, William Tincup. William, it's really a privilege to have you join us today, and we've had a chance to catch up here a little bit before recording our session today. And I noticed behind you is just a tremendous amount of art, so I'm really impressed with that. Would you care to share some of that? Because I know you probably have done all of it.
I did. This is all my work, and my kids found my art. I've been painting since I was young, probably 9, 10 years old. And I had all of it shrink wrapped and put up in my attic. And one of my youngest son found one of them and undid the shrink wrap, asked my wife about it. And then they decided to put it all up in my office. And that was before COVID.
Well, good for him, because it looks beautiful up there.
Well,
and
thank you.
I'm glad we got to touch on that. But, today we're here to talk about your industry specifically, the HR and talent acquisition industry. And before we get underway with that, I'd like for you to share with the audience a little bit about your background, if you don't mind.
Sure. I'm non-traditional HR, a person that cares about both recruiting and HR. I kind of came up through marketing. So I have a BA in art history, an MA in American Indian Studies, an MBA in entrepreneurship and marketing. But really, I came up through agency recruiting, agency marketing. So an ad agency, PR agency, etc., and fell in love with HR. So I actually sold my equity in the agency so that I could focus more on HR and recruiting, because when you get to know HR, you find out that they know all the dark crevices of an organization. They know the sexual harassment claims, they know the pay and equity, they know everything that's dark. But yet, when you meet them and talk to them, they're hopeful. There's a hope to them. There's a glass, half full approach to them, that they're optimistic about talent. They're optimistic about their employees. They're optimistic, even though they know the darkness, they're so optimistic. And so I fell in love with that.
That's wonderful, because, as a previous business owner, and the thing that drives any company is the people. It is all about the people. How can you get the best of your team and give them an environment for them to excel? So HR teams by nature are it's great to hear you say that it's nice to see them positive and supportive of the team.
100%. And I think, to your point about finding out where people, thrive, it's solving, if you go back to high school, trigonometry, you're solving for something that's moving. And the pandemic has taught us a bunch of lessons that sped up a lot of things. And if there's some silver linings out of that tragedy, is remote work and hybrid and flexibility, and understanding that some of these knowledge working jobs don't necessarily need to be done at a headquarters. And I think that what's interesting about that from a talent perspective is now they know that. And we now get to have a new kind of a discourse with talent of, where do you thrive? You want to come into the office? A lot of younger, I'd say people under 30, they want to actually come to the office. Like they want, because that would be their social network. If we go back in our history and look back early in our career, like the office was fun. Like we'd go to the office and we'd work, but then we go to go to the game or go to the pub or do whatever. Like we met people that way. And so there's a real yearning, which was really interesting, from people that are under 30 or people that are extroverts People that
Mhm.
want to get out. They don't want to be in their house. They want to get out. So I think flexibility is what HR is solving for today, which is different than what they were solving for in 2019.
Yeah, that's great. So, and I'll touch on just a couple of other things here that I know you're based in the Austin and Dallas area in Texas, and that you're president and editor at large of Recruiting Daily. And what amazes me is that you currently are doing three podcasts. I've got my hands filled with one, but here you are knocking off three of those. So
I love learning. In my mind, I've made it kind of a way for me to learn, because like I've done 3 podcasts today and a webinar, and it's just a fun way to learn. It's a
yeah,
good way to interact with other people, to kind of get their take on different things and understand, like, okay, so I don't get trapped in my own mind and my own mentality of the way that I think things should work.
yeah,
And which is exactly what would happen.
yeah.
I would think that I have the answer, but bouncing things off of people that are different from me, it starts to help me really understand topically something in more of texture, more dimensionality than I would have given it.
Yeah.
So I love it.
One other element that I want to provide to our audience today is that you also serve on the board of 20 different companies,
Yep.
helping them in the HR and talent acquisition space. And that takes up a fair amount of your time, I'm sure, as well.
It's fun because I love entrepreneurs, and it was all accidental. I would tell you that, I can look back now and tell you that pure accident. I just really fell in love with this one CEO, and I wanted to work with him. They didn't have any money. Shocking, not shocking. It was a startup and they didn't have any money, and I just wanted to work with them. And they said, well, why don't we just give you equity? And I'm like, okay, cool.
Okay.
Didn't think anything about it, because I just wanted to work with them. And I think when you fall in love with entrepreneurs, you know how chaotic they are. Business owners, you know how chaotic their lives are. It's like one day they're fighting this fire, the next day they're fighting that fire, they're blindsided by this thing. It's actually a lot of fun to be
Yeah.
an advisor, to be on a board. Board of directors is a little bit different because of fiscal responsibility and fiscal duties that you have to adhere to. But being an advisor, you don't have any of that. You can just give people advice, and whether or not they take it or not, that's not really on you.
Yeah. So one of the things I'd like to do today, William, is kind of focus in on the area of pre-employment and background screening. As you know, S2 Verify, we're in this space intimately. We're helping companies all across America today. This industry is highly fragmented. It's about a $4 billion industry. There are like 4 or 5 major publicly traded companies,
Right.
but there's like 1,200 other small firms around the country. So what's your perspective on pre-employment screening today? How do you see this fragmented industry? How's that impacting HR teams?
Well, I'm really excited about the category, because I think if we would have talked in 2019, Arnett, I think you and I would have probably talked about the commoditization of pre-employment, both assessments, tests, screening, checks, all that type of stuff. We would have said people are it's a race to the bottom. And now what I'm looking at in the category is not just what you do pre-employment, but what you do past pre-employment to actually make sure you set yourself up for success as a business and as an HR leader. So if as an HR leader or talent acquisition leader, if you look at background checks in kind of a pre-pandemic way, you're probably not giving enough credit to what's going on with the technology and the way that the world has changed in terms of managing risk. So I think the way to reframe that for folks is so that they understand is, I think it's something we can all agree on. Should you do a background check on someone you hire? Like, okay, if you don't, you're playing with dynamite. Okay, so there's that. But it's also kind of now a game of, okay, but once you do that, what do you do next with that data? And what do you do next with that employee? And I'll get, the worst case scenario, everyone's got a Twitter account. Okay, so you got that. You've also got that, somebody can get jammed up with a DUI or a serious felony, and they don't necessarily have to disclose that, and they're employed by you. And so it means they carry your brand. They carry your brand reputation, and that's a risk. So not knowing, again, I think before you could kind of play the card of plausible deniability. Now, as an HR leader and as a business leader, there is no such thing. If you
Yeah.
don't know, that's actually your fault.
It's one of the things that I believe the government does very well when it comes to screening and clearing individuals.
Yep.
So if you're going to have a secret or top secret clearance in the government, you've got to go through periodic screening every couple of years.
Yep.
And that is I know some companies that do that periodically, but I will tell you, there's more that don't do it. So the idea of that continuous review and protecting your brand is a critical step for companies.
Well, and managing risk, even if we just want to talk to the CFO and the risk managers about this, just say, hey, listen, this is just a simple way to think about risk. We think about risk differently. Talent, I think the government does a wonderful job, especially in doing with clearance. Is they're continuing to make sure that you are who you say you are, and that there's nothing that's popped up in your life that could possibly be a problem. Like there's nothing invasive about that. That's just like it's just good business. Now the government does that. I think, as you said, I think the defense contractors in particular do a wonderful job of just making sure that, hey, we're managing a risk. Like, you don't like that, don't play. Like, you don't have to work at Bell Helicopters.
Yeah, the area that is important for clients to remember is they need to have an informed decision-making matrix that will, and it's not just across the board, it's for every specific job category.
Right.
So if they're going to exclude somebody for a conviction on a topic, have a good nexus of why you're excluding that person.
Yep.
Make it relevant to the position that they're going to hold.
Right.
Just because somebody has a conviction for, let's call it, you mentioned DUI. That may not mean that they can't hold a job for you. What it suggests is maybe they have an issue with alcohol that needs to be, you need to be certain is under management and control. So,
and it's a wonderful conversation. It's just like, okay, hey, listen, let's just talk about it. There's no need to run from it. It happened. We all make mistakes in life. Tell us a little bit about it. What's going on? Okay, fantastic. Like, again, if you're convicted for tax fraud and you're hiring a CFO, you're going to want to know that. Like, as a business leader, you want to know that. And again, I think years ago we could have acted like we didn't know and it wasn't our fault, and we could kind of hide behind that. And I think that those days are just gone. For HR leaders and business leaders in particular, you're in the business of knowing.
So over the last couple of years, obviously our country and the world has gone through an experience like no other times, and COVID has changed everything for us. In the area of pre-employment screening, have you seen any changes because of the pandemic?
I have, because of remote work, Arnett. I think that because we opened up, which is wonderful, we opened up the world as a talent base. So now if I'm sitting in Dallas, Texas, I can apply to a job in Paris, not Paris, Texas, but Paris, France. And there is a Paris, Texas, by the way. But so I can apply to a job in Paris, and that's not unusual. Pre-COVID, there was remote work, but it wasn't on the scale, wasn't in the intensity as it is right now. Well, now that opens up a little bit of a can of worms in terms of identity verification and identity fraud. So you're working, somebody hires you, or you hire someone from pick your favorite country. Okay, you think you know who they are, but you don't know necessarily who they are. So you can run a background check. You should do that. But you're also going to have to verify that person is who they say they are. So I think what I'm bullish on, I think it's actually a wonderful thing for the industry, is not just checking one's background, but also verifying their identity. And because there's so much fraud that's happened historically, but because of COVID and because of remote work, that fraud is there. And so again, we can't put our faces and heads in the sand. We've got to actually get on top of this and understand both what we need to do pre-employment, but also what we need to do with identity verification and making sure that those people are who they say they are. So I think COVID sped that up.
Yeah.
I think that sped remote up work up, but I also think it sped up what's the change in pre-employment of like, okay, there's another layer to this.
In the world of background screening, how are companies that you're working with, how do you see them make decisions about background screening providers? Is it around a price point? Is it around accuracy of information, compliance, speed on which they return it? I think the right answer across the board is probably all of that. But what are the elements that you see most often come up in this decision process?
Arnett, if we would have had this conversation in December of 19, I would have said price.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's a race to the bottom. Today, I think price is always, always a factor, checked, so understood. But I believe speed is really important to people because the talent is moving so fast. So whether or not you're hiring an hourly warehouse worker or you're hiring a CFO, talent is thinking in minutes, seconds, and hours. They're just thinking differently about things. And so that background check, in 2019, if that thing took 72 hours, that's too long.
Yeah.
We need to be able to be able to have access to that data, give them kind of here's what's going on assessment, a risk assessment, if you will, of what's going on. We need to be able to do that and get seconds, minutes, and hours at a price point that makes sense. But yeah, I think speed is actually kind of bumped up on the list.
As the
talent's changed. Yeah.
As the world's technology advances, that's certainly adding to the timeliness of background screening. Years ago, for our audience information here, there's over 3,300 county courthouses in America. And in the old days, you had to send a county runner to every courthouse a person lived. So if you're hiring somebody in their 40s or 50s and they've lived in 20 different locations, you literally had to send somebody to every county courthouse to check records. Yep. So today that's kind of changing. There's still, make no mistake about it, there's still certain records that need to be pulled from the courthouse, but that kind of impacts the timeliness. And that's an education point that I think, HR team, if they share that with their business leaders, to letting them know the challenges, because everything can't be done in 24 hours.
No, it is again, it's I think there's a communication, as you said, to the business leaders, the rest of HR, all of the talent acquisition team, but also to candidates. So I think there's an additional kind of a layer of communication of letting them know, hey, we're going to run this check. This is what it takes. And this is why, maybe even to the point of this is why it takes this. So that you understand that. Now, again, it's kind of managing that expectation like FedEx does or Domino's does so well of like, here's the process. Here's the steps of the process, and here's how long it's going to take. If a candidate knows that, they're okay. It's when we don't communicate to them effectively, here's what's going on. They're left to kind of their own device of, well, I don't know if I'm going to get the job. I don't know what's going on. They're not talking to me. Like, I guess I just, they just move on. I think we could do a better job of doing candidate communication, especially around pre-employment and background checks in particular.
That communication piece is so important because, everybody should have a right to earn a living in our country. And
100%.
And on individuals who have challenges, the more open they are about the challenges, the more forthcoming a company is going to be about maybe there is a place for you or there's not. And if there's not, they tell them why.
That's right.
And as long as there's a good reason based on what they've learned, I think, the candidate can go forward and hopefully find something.
Well, and everybody wants to feel good about what, about that opportunity. And you talk to people in the second chance or fair chance world. And one of the things that you'll learn is like that check the box thing of yesteryear. That puts everything at one it makes everything equal. Okay, so you could have ran a red light or you could have been charged with a double capital murder. Okay, well, that's just one box. And again, not all crimes are the same. And there's a length in which, there's a depth to which when that crime happened. There's context is the point. And letting people kind of, again, ban the box, getting out of that business and then being able to contextualize, hey, I was 16 years old. I stole a car. I ran it into I ran it into a wall. Like, I made mistakes. I was 16. That shouldn't have to your point, that person's 30 years old. Like, they should be penalized for something they did when they were 16. Like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just life.
Over the last 2 years, hiring has taken a different approach. Companies are doing more remote onboarding, remote introductions to the company. And how are companies finding ways to make sure that the talent is going to be in alignment with their company culture? Are you finding things that companies, any company doing something unique that you think others could benefit from?
I think the companies that they take the veil, as much of the veil away, so that because a hire is about fit. It's all kind of you fitting to us fitting to you, and making sure that you have the skills and making sure that we put you in a position to where you thrive and all that type of stuff. So the companies that thrive, or that are doing this best, are the ones that basically take that veneer or that veil, and they strip it away and say, this is the job.
Yeah.
These are the people you're gonna be working with. This is the hiring manager. This is the team. This is the project. Like, there's a company in Boston for technical talent that they put in pre-employment. So they put engineers into a technical environment for that company. So here's like a sandbox, and here's the technologies that we use, and now here's what we want you to do. So they give them a task and they watch them code. And so it's great from the candidate's perspective because they get to see what projects that they'd be working on and what technologies. So, and it's great for the employer to see is, do they fit well with these technologies and do they code well and all that other stuff. But what it's really doing is it's this transparency of, like, there's no, shock and awe. You get the job and you all of a sudden you find out, like, wait a minute, we're going to be developing most of this in Python. Like, I don't know Python, again, there shouldn't be any shock and awe. So simple answer is stripping away as much of that, what used to be kind of a black box, and making it more candidate friendly to understand, this is the job, these are the people, this is the outcomes. Like, if this isn't a good fit for you, cool. If it's a good fit for you and it's a good fit for us, then let's find a way to do this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, William, I could spend all afternoon talking with you on this topic, and I really appreciate your time today. Would you mind sharing with our audience where they can learn more about what you do and how they can connect with you?
Sure. You just put William Tincup into Google. You'll find me. I'm pretty easy to find, but my
Yes,
emails.
you are. That's a fact there. So I've also got to ask this one last question. If S2 Verify were to run a background check on you today, is there any discovery that you're going to go, oh no, I should have put that down?
Arnett, I'm so thankful because I grew up in the 80s. I'm so thankful that phones didn't have video.
You know what? I think all of us are. Yeah.
I am so thankful. I'm very thankful because I wouldn't be shocked. I would be shocked today just because of the proliferation of video everywhere. And I think that's actually a really kind of an interesting thing for how people assess talent in the future. And what they find about people when they look on social, they look on Facebook, or they look in video, they find different things about people. It's like, well, at a certain point, we didn't have that. I made all those mistakes. Like every one of those mistakes, I made every one of those. But they wasn't captured on video. It wasn't captured on Instagram. So I wouldn't be shocked at anything on my background check just because I didn't get caught.
There you go.
Not that I didn't do it. That's just it wasn't caught on video.
That's probably for each of us out there. So, well, look, William, it's been really a great pleasure having you today with us. I hope we find another time in the future to catch back up. And our goal here is do all we can to get America back to work. And you're doing a great job in getting us back to work. So, thank you for that, and you have a great evening.
You too now. Take care of yourself.
If you want to stay abreast of HR, recruiting, and hiring trends, tips, and tools, make sure you subscribe to America Back to Work. If you enjoyed this episode, leave us a rating and a review.